Welcome back to the channel. On today's video, we are talking all about the differences between compound bows and crossbows and which might be better for you if you're just getting into archery for the first time. You might be a beginner. We're going to talk about which one you might need to pick up instead of the other. Okay, this video is also going to serve as just a comparison between the two if you're actually looking for getting into either one. So maybe you're an intermediate archer, or maybe you've been doing this for many years. Which one is going to be more cost effective? Which one has the advantages and disadvantages over the other? And I'm just going to tell you, both of them have disadvantages and both of them have advantages depending on what we're actually talking about. So if you like this type of stuff, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're not a member already. And guys, let's dive into this and we're going to break all of this down. Let's start out talking about the compound bow. So the compound bow has been around for a long time, and it has been legal to hunt with in most states for a long time now. Can hunt with this in just about every state, if not every state. The crossbow, on the other hand, is not legal in every state to hunt with, so that is one of the disadvantages. First up, we're going to talk about the advantages of picking up a compound bow versus a crossbow. Okay, so the very first thing that comes to my mind when I'm looking at a compound bow is they're just fun to shoot. I can shoot this thing all summer long. I'm just having a good time shooting with my buddies, you know, being competitive with each other, and it's fun. With a crossbow, it's kind of like a gun. I mean, you can shoot it multiple times. The competitive edge isn't there, okay? It's got a scope on it. You can shoot that thing a lot, and it's kind of like a gun, okay? This thing right here, there's more of a challenge to it. It's more of an art versus looking through a scope and shooting at a target that way. Okay, it's pretty fun with a gun. With a crossbow, it's kind of not. You have to cock that thing every single time. With the bow, you know, you're just putting arrows in and you're good to go. Okay, and then you're able to draw back and launch those arrows down the range. Another thing about the compound bow that sparks my interest is kind of going along with that competitive edge. It's more challenging to actually use a compound bow for most archers. Okay, most people, they have to actually practice with a compound bow to actually, you know, take it hunting and be effective that way. If not, you're just going to be wounding deer or wounding animals, and it's not going to be an ethical process for you. The crossbow, on the other hand, most people can sight that thing in and go out and hunt and be effective with it. It's going to be more ethical, so that is one advantage for the crossbow over this. But this is more challenging, so if you're wanting a challenging hunt, definitely pick a compound bow. It's going to be more challenging for you, and you're going to feel more rewarded once you actually do kill a deer or whatever animal you're trying to target. Another advantage of a compound bow is it is quiet. We're going to take some practice shots with both of these and compare them, so please stick around for that. We're actually going to slow it down, put it in slow-mo. That way you can hear the differences. There is a dramatic difference. Okay, this bow does have a string dampener, and it does have some of the string silencers here too, dampeners here on the bus cables. But this thing is pretty much dead silent. That way you don't have too much string jump from the deer, and it's pretty quiet. With a crossbow, yeah, it's a lot faster, but that thing cracks off a huge amount of noise that the compound bow doesn't. Now, some of the budget entry-level bows are going to be a little bit louder. They don't have all the dampening items, and they're just a little bit louder. So this right here is the Diamond SB Deploy, and this is kind of like an intermediate level bow, and you can pick them up for anywhere from around like 700 to 800 bucks. So it's kind of in that mid-range. So it does have some of the premium features, and it does quieten this bow down quite a bit. All right, guys, let's talk about some of the disadvantages of the compound bow. We talked about the advantages being that it's quieter, it is funner to shoot, and it brings in that competitive edge because it is a little bit more challenging. Some of the disadvantages are they're usually more expensive, unless you're talking about a Raven crossbow. But typically you can get a decent crossbow for a lot cheaper than you can get a decent compound bow. Okay, I got the Barnett Whitetail Hunter STR. It's around a $350 crossbow, and that thing is dead accurate. It is a great crossbow. And this right here, like I said, this is just a medium level, intermediate, style bow, and this thing was like 800 bucks. Okay, then you're putting a lot more into the arrows. The cost of the arrows are a lot more, and you're going to be getting into getting a compound bow a lot more pricey than that of a crossbow. Okay, so that's probably the first disadvantages is going to be the cost. Okay, another disadvantage, just from my experience out in the woods hunting with these, is going to be the angles that you're actually allowed to shoot. So when you're in a tree stand, which most people hunt with a bow out of a tree stand, there's a lot of different angles you're having to shoot. And typically, if I have my tree stand facing straight ahead like this, I'm not going to be able to shoot in weird positions like I would with a crossbow. With a crossbow, I could literally just lean this way and point and aim. With this, I can't really draw across my body unless I get really crafty with it. You can, but it's going to be a little weird. Okay, so the angles that you can actually shoot, you're going to be limited on with the compound bow. You know, if you're hunting from the ground, which a lot of people hunt from the ground, they don't actually hunt from a tree stand, you're going to be limited with a compound bow just because this motion right here is very noticeable. Even if you pull straight back like that, that is very noticeable to a deer. Even if you're behind a bush or whatever. So the hunting public, they do a lot of ground hunting with compound bows. They might suit up in a ghillie suit and hide behind bushes and stuff. Yes, you can make quick draws and stuff like that, but it's a lot easier with a crossbow. Okay, that right there, you're gonna be able to hide, you're gonna be able to stay on target the whole time and not have that big movement. Deer really pick up on movement super easy. So that right there is gonna draw their attention a lot more than you just already being sitting there with a crossbow. Last year I had this situation where I called a deer in. I saw it probably about 100 yards away from me, and I was sitting above it on the high ground. I was behind a tree, just squatted down like this with my crossbow. And that thing came up my way. I had done a couple grunt calls and it came my way, and I was literally just waiting on it. And when it got broadside to me, squeezed the trigger, it had no idea I was there. But I believe if I would have had a compound bow and had to make this big movement, he would have seen that in his peripheral vision, and he would have probably been alerted and he would have took off. Okay, so I'd have had less time to actually make that shot. With the crossbow, I was just sitting there and I was going to be selective, and I waited and made the shot. With the compound, you're going to have to react a lot faster if you want to get on target. So that's another disadvantage to the compound. Okay, and then the last disadvantage, the third reason here, and this isn't all inclusive, this is just some of the things that are coming to my mind at the time of this video. The third thing is going to be tuning the bow. So compound bows, over time, the strings do stretch a little bit, especially with these like binary cams or dual cam systems. Okay, if you have a single cam with a roller on top, typically the string can stretch and you're still going to be okay, and the tuning's not going to be off too much. But with these dual cam bows, you're going to have to make sure that timing is always on point. If not, your arrow is going to be all over the place and it's not going to be consistent. I don't have that issue with crossbow. Crossbow is very consistent all the time. Okay, this bow, not so much. I'm constantly, every season, having to make sure everything is within spec and make sure everything is good to go as far as the string goes. Okay, making sure that the string isn't stretched too much. And typically you want to change strings every like 2 to 3 years. I don't know if that's a marketing scheme or whatever, but you know, I don't do that. I kind of just look to make sure the string isn't too stretched out and make sure everything is still in tune. And when I go to paper tune this, I still make sure my arrows are cutting through that paper nice and even every single time. And if that's still happening, I'm not switching out the cables because I don't have to. We talked about the compound bow and some of the advantages and disadvantages of the compound bow. Now let's break out the crossbow and see kind of what advantages and disadvantages are of that thing. All right, so we have our old crossbow out here. So this thing, guys, is tried and true. This thing slings bolts like no other, and It's just accurate all the time. So the first thing is accuracy. If you're a brand new archer trying to get into deer hunting, or maybe you've never shot a compound or anything else before, I would suggest, if you're just out there for the hunting experience, nothing else, you're not gonna be shooting for fun, all that, pick up a crossbow, okay? You're gonna be able to get this thing dialed in and sighted in with just a little bit of effort, and that's it. And you're gonna be able to accurately hit targets 100% of the time with this crossbow, okay? So that is advantage number one. Advantage number two is the price. This right here was only around 350 bucks, and this is a decent crossbow. Okay, I would say this is probably not even an intermediate level crossbow as far as price point, but this thing performs almost just like a high quality, top notch crossbow. This thing slings them out there 375 feet per second, and it just is on point every single time. So that is one of the advantages over a compound bow. This thing is always accurate. There's not much user error involved in it. You put the crosshairs on that target, pull the trigger, and you're good to go. No target panic with your release. You're just good to go. You pull the trigger, just like a gun. If you're used to shooting a gun, this thing is right in line with using a gun. So cost is number two, and also with the bolts. These bolts are a lot cheaper on average than having to buy a good set of carbon arrows for your compound bow. These are Carbon Express bolts. For a pack of 6, these were only 36 bucks. That is still cheaper than going out and buying a set of Carbon Express arrows for your compound. It's just something about a compound bow. All of the accessories are a lot more. I could go out and buy an upgraded scope for this and maybe pay 150 bucks. Go out and buy a new sight for the compound bow, you're looking at least 150 bucks, if not more, for just a halfway decent sight. So the accessories are a lot more expensive on a compound bow versus the crossbow. Okay, another advantage, kind of like what we had said with, which was a disadvantage with the compound, is if I'm sitting in a tree stand, I can shoot at multiple different angles. I can shoot all the way around almost 180 degrees. And if I have a standing stand where I can actually stand up in it and move around, you know, I can make shots to the rear as well, or lean out and possibly get a shot off. Okay, with a compound bow, you're very limited on that. Your range of motion is very, very limited. So that win goes to the crossbow. And I've had a lot of different scenarios when I'm out hunting where I was with a compound bow and it was a big buck there, couldn't take a shot because it just was not feasible. But with a crossbow, definitely would have been feasible. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind if you're getting into one or the other. Okay, so let's talk some of the disadvantages of the crossbow. And it's not really a disadvantage. I guess number one comes to my mind is the competitive edge. Okay, I could have bought a crossbow several years ago, but I opted for a new compound bow just because I was one of those people, oh, you're out there hunting with a crossbow? Well, that's kind of cheating. It's like a gun. Okay, I changed my mindset since then, but the competitive edge isn't there. With a compound bow, you're actually having to practice, put in a lot of hours into practicing to get where you need to be for hunting season, okay? If not, once again, you're gonna be wounding deer and it's not gonna be a good day. You're gonna have to trail those things for a long time and track them down. It's not gonna be good for you or the animal. So please, if you do pick up a crossbow, you know, get that thing dialed in. If you're doing the compound route, definitely put a lot of practice in, get it dialed in to where you're actually gonna be hitting the spot when you actually go to shoot an animal. Okay, so the competitive edge isn't there. This thing is on the money all the time. So if you're out there shooting with your buddies and stuff, practicing, this isn't gonna be the funnest thing for you to shoot. So that actually goes to the compound bow. So keep that in mind when you're deciding which one you're gonna be going with. Okay, another disadvantage, and this might be the biggest disadvantage, is crossbow is extremely loud. Okay, it doesn't matter how many dampening items you have on here. We got limb dampeners, we got string dampeners. You can even use heavier bolts. That is all gonna quieten down the crossbow a lot, but it's not gonna be so much that it compares to the compound bow. The compound bow definitely wins in the stealth category. Okay, the compound bow is gonna be a lot slower, but it's gonna be a lot quieter, so it kind of makes up for the difference there. The compound or the crossbow is gonna be a lot faster, so that right there is gonna compensate for the noise a lot. Maybe the deer's not gonna jump the string just because it's fast, but you go to shooting a lot longer ranges, that string jump is gonna be there. So you're gonna have to take that into consideration. The deer will possibly hear the crack before it hits them. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're making the purchase. All right guys, we talked about some disadvantages of the compound bow, the advantages of the compound bow. We talked about advantages and disadvantages of the crossbow. Now let's do a little bit of a shot comparison, test out the noise to see how dramatic the noise difference actually is, and that way you can make an informed decision whether or not you're gonna pull the trigger on a compound or a crossbow in the future. All right guys, we're gonna take our first shot here with the compound bow. Pay attention to how loud this is and just some of the motions that the bow is making, and to try to make a good comparison between this and the crossbow. So we're at 20 yards here. We're gonna make a quick shot and just show you. So another item you're gonna have to purchase if you're using a compound bow is a bow release like this. And this is just a cheap TrueFire release. I think this was like 25 or 30 bucks. And it's just real cheap, and it'll get you out there shooting the bow on a budget. Okay, you don't have to spend a lot. There's a lot of fine-tuned releases out there, but for hunting, you don't really need it that much. So another disadvantage to a crossbow is you have to cock that thing. If you were to make a bad shot on a deer in a tree stand, you're gonna have a hard time cocking that bow again. Let's just say they do stick around and they don't know what happened. You know, a second shot's gonna be kind of hard. So here we are trying to cock this crossbow. All right, so you do have to do that every single time. This isn't like The Walking Dead where Daryl is just slinging bolts all the time, never has to cock the thing. Guys, this is real world and you have to actually do that, okay? So pay attention to how loud this thing is. All right, we got the crossbow ready to go. We're gonna go ahead and fire a shot off here. Pay attention to how loud this is. All right, so a lot louder, wasn't it? All right, I told you so. So we're gonna go down here and look at the penetration difference. This was at the same distance. Look at that. The top one is the crossbow, the bottom one is the compound bow. Look at the difference. All right guys, so hopefully you like these videos. I'm trying to roll out these videos to help you all that actually want to get into hunting this year make an informed decision on whether or not you're going to buy a certain type of gear or not. So hopefully this video will help you decide whether a compound or a crossbow is right for you, and taking some of the different things into consideration, such as how much you're going to spend, how fast you want your bow to be, how quiet you want your bow to be, and just some of the functionality differences, whether you're going to be hunting with this primarily or actually just going out and shooting with a bunch of buddies. Which one are you going to be focusing on? And guys, hopefully you liked this video. If you did, leave a like. Also subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. We'd love to have you on the channel, and hit that notification bell and stay tuned for the next one. Guys, keep it blue collar.